Welcome to New York University, Casa Italiana, Zerilli-Marimò. My name is Stefano Albertini. I'm the director of Casa Italiana. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome back to our auditorium Maestro Eve Queler and Professor Francesco Izzo. Some of you might remember that last year we had a presentation of I Lombardi alla Prima Crociata, and the format is more or less the same. Professor Izzo and Maestro Queler will discuss and talk about the opera, and we have the fortune to have with us some wonderful artists that will perform excerpts from the opera. I'm not going to do a formal presentation of our guests, neither of the speakers nor of the singers, because you have bios in the program that you have received when you entered the auditorium. Just allow me to express my gratitude to Maestro Queler for all she has done, and being in an Italian institution, all she has done for Italian opera. Of course, her repertoire is not limited to Italian opera. She goes way beyond that. But what she has been doing with the Opera Orchestra of New York is an amazing job of bringing to light operas that were rarely or never performed in the United States, giving them new light, creating attention, and at the same time employing wonderful artists to realize these performances. So I strongly encourage you to attend the performance of Opera Orchestra of New York of Roberto Devereux. I think it's on June 5th, Maestro. So don't miss that at Carnegie Hall, and you can get the tickets on the website of Carnegie Hall. Also with us is Professor Francesco Izzo, who is probably one of the longest standing partners of Casa Italiana since his days as a graduate student here at New York University. He's now a professor of music at the University of Southampton, and he's also the co-director of the American Institute for Verdi Studies here at New York University. But tonight we are celebrating the fact that for the first time I welcome him to the stage of Casa Italiana as general editor of the critical works of Giuseppe Verdi with University of Chicago Press. It's an incredible honor, and I couldn't think of a person that deserves that honor more than Francesco Izzo. Please.
Good evening, and a warm welcome from me as well. It is always a great pleasure to come back to Casa Italiana, and when I'm here with Eve Queler, it's even better. And thanks to Stefano Albertini for hosting us tonight and for this rather touching introduction. Just to give you a sense of the format of this evening, I have good news and bad news. The good news is that Maestro Queler is not only a highly distinguished artist, she's also one of the most generous people I've ever met. And she's prepared a performance that is, I don't want to say the whole opera, but it is a good amount of music. So we're going to hear a lot of wonderful music and a great deal of fantastic singing. The bad news is that I'll be doing some talking in between the selections, and that will become increasingly unwelcome as the evening progresses. I know that all too well, but I'll try to keep it to a minimum. So I will give a little introduction, and then I will turn the floor over to Eve, and then we'll go back and forth and elbow each other off the stage, as it were. Cyprus, Siberia, the Moroccan desert, the fort of Golconda, the West Indies. The locales in which the approximately 70 operas by Gaetano Donizetti are set are numerous and remarkably diverse. As Italian opera of the Romantic era opened up to an unprecedented wealth of cultural and literary stimuli and influences, authors and audiences alike felt the deep fascination of distant lands, idealized, reimagined, rather than depicted realistically, of course. Those lands serve as backdrops for tales of political and religious conflict, war, death, and, of course, love. Among the distant lands explored in Donizetti's oeuvre, none, perhaps, were as popular as the British Isles. And no period of English history stirred the public imagination at the time more than the Tudor era, with its wealth of political intrigue, betrayals, dark Gothic halls, prisons, and, of course, beheadings. Although the composer himself never referred to his three Tudor operas, Anna Bolena of 1830, Maria Stuarda of 1834, and Roberto Devereux of 1837, as a trilogy, this fascinating group of works constitutes a group in the real sense of the word, and a fantastic entry point into the world of Gaetano Donizetti and Italian Romantic opera. Before the beginning of the so-called Donizetti Renaissance in the mid-20th century, these three Tudor operas had practically disappeared from the repertoire, along with most of Donizetti's serious works. The only opera by Donizetti that circulated regularly before the 1950s was Lucia di Lammermoor, and then there were the comic masterpieces. It was Maria Callas who revived Anna Bolena in 1957 at La Scala, a legendary production, and Maria Stuarda and Roberto Devereux followed suit in the 1960s and beyond. Donizetti's Tudor operas are now revived periodically in the world's leading opera houses, and sometimes, intriguingly, they are presented as a trilogy, as a set. The Welsh National Opera did so last year, for example. But of the three, Roberto Devereux is the one we hear least frequently. Many of you know, I'm sure, that the Metropolitan Opera here in New York has recently produced both Anna Bolena and Maria Stuarda, but not Roberto Devereux. And someone very dear to us, Maestro Eve Queler, took notice. And so thanks to her, in a little bit more than a week, on Thursday, June the 5th, as Stefano Albertini reminded us, we have the extraordinary opportunity to hear the third Tudor opera by Gaetano Donizetti in concert performance at Carnegie Hall. In that performance, I should mention the Italian soprano Mariella De Via returns to New York after a long absence, and she sings the highly dramatic and technically demanding role of Queen Elizabeth I. Even if Eve weren't conducting, one would want to go to hear Mariella De Via, there's no doubt about that, and vice versa. But to have the two of them together, I envy you. It is a tradition of sorts that when Eve Queler and the Opera Orchestra of New York are preparing one of their magnificent performances, as Stefano Albertini reminded us, they visit Casa Italiana. So this really is Casa for them. And last year we had a wonderful evening devoted to Giuseppe Verdi's I Lombardi e la Prima Crociata. Today it is the turn of Donizetti. As usual, Eve has surrounded herself with a number of young artists who are involved in the production as understudies. So that's yet another privilege of being here this evening. These are not the artists who will be on stage at Carnegie Hall in a week, but they are the artists who make this performance possible by being there, with their professionalism, by doing rehearsals, and by being ready to step in if anything goes wrong with the principal singers. That's how the world of opera functions. It is a complex one. Again, we have this great privilege to hear a number of young artists. I hope you all have a copy of the program that was distributed at the entrance. Names and biographies are there, and I don't want to steal any time from the music itself. Maestro Queler has graciously offered to share some of her views of this opera with us before sitting at the piano bench. So at this point, without further ado, I would like to invite my friend, Maestro Eve Queler, up to the stage, and we should all welcome her as warmly as we know how. Eve will now read her commentary, and then she will present the first two selections from the opera, the aria for Sara and Elisabetta's entrance aria.
Those who have never heard this beautiful opera by Donizetti and think the music is unfamiliar have a surprise in store. The first melody heard in the overture, which we not do tonight, is My Country 'Tis of Thee, known to every American school child, at least in my time. In fact, that melody was borrowed from our English forefathers. The real title of the song is God Save the Queen. It was used intentionally by Donizetti since this is an opera about Queen Elizabeth, and Robert of Essex is Roberto Devereux. Much has been written about the relationship of Elizabeth and Essex. She, at the time, a woman in her 60s, he half her age, and she with strong romantic designs on him. Elizabeth's subjects were not allowed to marry without her permission, especially those with whom she was in love. There followed the usual court intrigue. In this opera, Elizabeth has given Essex a ring. He gives this ring to Sara, whom he loves. Sara gives him a blue scarf embroidered in gold as a token of her affection, and also to extract from him a promise that he will flee the court, since Sara is already married to the Earl of Nottingham. Essex went on a mission for the Queen, and during that mission, Sarah's father passed away, and the Queen decreed that Sara had to be married and protected, and the Queen chose the husband of the Earl or the Duke of Nottingham, and therefore Sara was forced to marry him in Essex's absence. Sara gives the ring, she's embroidering a blue scarf as a token of her affection, and also to extract from Essex a promise that he will leave because his life is in danger if he stays. Essex is caught with the scarf and condemned. Sara is prevented from bringing the ring to the Queen, an act which would have saved his life, by her jealous husband. Sir Walter Raleigh appears in the opera for a short time. All of this court intrigue inspired some very beautiful music. The opera contains sweeping melodies, fiery scales, brilliant high notes, and exquisite love duets. This is an opera of duets. There are 4 duets. Everybody's got a duet with everybody else. The chorus of courtiers plays an important part as they comment on the events. Everyone who has ever heard Walt Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs will recognize the melody sung by the chorus at the beginning as the second act as "Someday my prince will come." If you come, you will hear it, and you'll say, oh, that's it. Although we don't know if Walt Disney ever heard Donizetti's Roberto Devereux, we know that Donizetti never heard Walt Disney's Snow White. So Roberto Devereux, complete with the ring and the scarf, but without Sir Walter Raleigh's cloak, will be heard in concert form with orchestra, chorus, and soloists, and yours truly. Thank you.
Morte
second aria was Elisabetta. You can tell that the two pieces are carefully weighted. We are at the beginning of the opera, and the first character is a duchess. She's introduced in a private, intimate way. She comes across immediately for what she is, an inconsolably sad woman who embroiders a scarf for a man who she cannot have, whereas the queen comes across as a public figure in a position of power. So for Sara, there is a single movement aria, a romanza, whereas for Elisabetta, for the queen, there is a two movement double aria. That's the typical structure that you will encounter in the operas of Rossini, Bellini, Donizetti, with whom we're dealing tonight, and also early and middle period Verdi, all the way to Rigoletto, La Traviata, and even La Forza del Destino and Aida. You find this structure which some scholars today refer to as la solita forma, the usual form. This is how composers wrote at the time of Donizetti. Let's remind ourselves that Gaetano Donizetti wrote 70 operas, give or take. And the way he did it, partly, the easy explanation is that he was a genius, but there were these conventions that made it possible to write rapidly with textual poetic structures that were laying the ground for the musical setting. So Roberto Devereux, like all of Donizetti's operas, is divided into numbers, musical dramatic tableaus concentrating on a specific situation involving one or more characters, and then within the tableau you find the solita forma, you find the sequence of a slow lyrical section followed by a conclusive cabaletta, and that's again what we just heard from Queen Elizabeth I. Eve reminded wisely that Roberto Devereux is an opera that contains many duets. We just heard two arias. That's the way characters are introduced frequently. You listen to any opera from the 1820s, the 1830s, the 1840s, many of the principal characters will make their first appearance with an aria, and they take their time. You're not going to find the concise initial utterance such as the esultate. When Otello lands on the shore of Cyprus, he comes in and in 35 seconds, he's done. He tells you who he is. Characters in early to mid-19th century Italian opera take their time. They need to express themselves lyrically as well as dramatically. But then, as we go on, we begin to find duets. And those duets are never serene. In Donizetti, you can be sure, that there is always a certain amount of suffering, and there is always a certain amount of tension. So now we're going to witness the highly dramatic encounter between Elisabetta and Roberto. Elisabetta is in love with Roberto, but she's also suspicious. She realizes that her love is not reciprocated. She reminds him of the ring that she once gave him, but he's a little bit distant. And in a subsequent duet, at the end of Act 1, we witness the encounter between Roberto and Sara, and you would think that would be a love duet. They do love each other, but at the same time, they're reproachful. Roberto is upset because Sara has married the Duke of Nottingham in his absence, and Sara is upset because she sees him wearing the Queen's ring, so she gets it in the end. And it's wonderful to see how Donizetti shapes his music and his duets, weighing very carefully between the dramatic elements, the tension between the characters, and the need for lyricism. In between these two duets, the one for Elisabetta and Roberto and the one for Sara and Roberto, we will encounter the fourth character of the opera, the Duke of Nottingham, who comes in with an aria, as you would expect. So without further ado, I'm going to leave the stage again, as I promised I would do, repeatedly. And I'm going to leave it to Eve to welcome back Elisabetta, who's just finished singing her aria, and Roberto, the Count of Essex.
Perché non so ma la ragion solecita sperde sospetto atroce, sperde il sospetto atroce. Che mai nel cuor degli angeli la colpa entrar non può, la colpa entrar non può, che mai nel cuor degli angeli la colpa entrar non può, la mio, quais manie fra vita e morte, ondeggio. Tu m'amiedeggio perderti, ma mi lasciarti deggio. A dell'amicizia prestami tu figure, mortale il cuore, tanta virtù non è che d'un mortale il cuore, tanta virtù no, 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 non è. Oh, tergi, le amare lagrime, sì, fuggirò, sì, prestami
I'm probably not supposed to comment on the performance before it's over, but I will anyway. And I'd just like to say to Eve, I just want to say to Eve, what a luxury to have singers like these as understudies. I mean, no wonder their bios are so long, you know. These are artists who already walk the stages of very prestigious opera houses, and it's a matter of not very long probably that they're going to be in the same position as the main cast are today. So we've heard two duets and in between Nottingham's aria. And now we turn to Act 2 of the opera and to yet another duet, the duet where Nottingham pleads for his friend, the Count of Essex, to the Queen. It is a very interesting moment for various reasons. At this point, Nottingham obviously has not yet discovered that Sara is in love with Roberto. That's where he changes radically as a character. And this is very special about this opera by Donizetti, but generally serious Donizetti during the 1830s. He rarely gives us one-dimensional characters. In this opera, Sara is perhaps the one figure who is the victim, who is the woman unhappily in love with a man she cannot have. But each of the other characters has shades. And nowhere is this more visible than in the character of the Duke of Nottingham. As he appears on stage, we just heard his magnificent double aria, he is no villain whatsoever. He is a friend of Roberto's, and he pleads for his friend. And it's one of those friend characters of which the 19th century Italian opera stage is filled. Think of Posa in Don Carlo, and there are many other examples. Think of Renato in Un ballo in maschera. That's a very interesting comparison. Since I'm here as a Verdi scholar, I can draw comparisons to Verdi. In Ballo, too, there's this very close friendship that is broken, fatally broken, at the point where Renato discovers that his wife is actually in love with the governor of Boston. That's a shift. And one sees, in an opera like Roberto Devereux, one sees how much Verdi learned from Donizetti. There is this sense of creating characters that evolve, who are, I don't want to say real human being, because in opera you always need to suspend your disbelief. Real human beings don't sing instead of talking, although it would be good if they did every now and then. But there is this sense of dealing with development of personality. So now that we turn to Act 2, we witness the moment where the council has met. They have decided that Roberto, who is accused of high treason, must be executed, and only Nottingham is willing to plea for him. At this point in Donizetti, we discover that, yes, there are many duets, but they're not all the same. Some of them are equally weighted with the two voices having the same importance, so to speak. But in this one, it's really Nottingham that stands out. It's one of those pieces that seem to cross the border or to sit right at the boundary between aria and duet. Nottingham takes pride of place. You can see that composers like Donizetti were experimenting. They were trying to break away from some of the conventions of Italian opera. So sometimes you have a duet, but the characters sing different musical materials. We heard it in one of the caballettas a moment ago. And sometimes you have a duet, but one character sings much more than another. Sometimes you have a quartet, as in Lucia di Lammermoor, but there are 6 people singing. That's what happens in the famous sestetto in Lucia di Lammermoor. Donizetti actually called it a quartet to indicate that it's really 4 voices that are very important there. Sometimes you have a quartet, but it's only one person who stands out. I'm talking about Bellini's I Puritani. So one must look at this repertoire with a great deal of care, because yes, there is the conventional form, there is the cantabile, there is the cabaletta, but within those conventional molds, there is a great deal that's happening for the sake of enhancing the drama, for the sake of making us believe in these characters. One final note before I leave the stage to Eve again. Nottingham is a baritone. he really is a baritone. This is not a voice type that was well defined at the time when Donizetti composed Roberto Devereux. At that time, the distinction was between tenor and bass. But a type of voice that stood somewhere in between the tenor and the bass was developing just then. Donizetti at this time was composing a great deal for a famous singer by the name of Giorgio Ronconi, who also sang the role of the Duke of Nottingham, in addition to many other Donizetti roles. Well, Giorgio Ronconi in 1842, so just some 5 years after Roberto Devereux, went on to create the title role in Verdi's Nabucco. So there is this bridge, this moment where we transition from Donizetti to Verdi, and as we make that transition, there are fascinating overlaps. So over to Eve and our wonderful cast again for the duet for Nottingham and Elisabetta, and then a very, very heated trio after Nottingham has discovered that the blue scarf was actually in Roberto's hands.
Sul noi non più mi fuori
such terrible things happen when you put a scarf in the wrong place. Such an interesting precursor to Verdi's Otello, of course, and the handkerchief. Well, not really a precursor because there is Shakespeare, far before all this, but you know what I mean. I'm thinking about opera. This trio that we just heard is part of a much larger number. This is the place where Elizabeth I is in a position of power, of authority. It's very interesting to see, since we were talking about Anna Bolena, Maria Stuarda, and Roberto Devereux, it is very interesting to see how these three operas relate in certain places. The plots are altogether independent, even though two of these operas share the same character, Elizabeth I. But some of you, those of you who saw Maria Stuarda at the Met, will remember the incredibly powerful moment where Mary Stuart, Maria Stuarda, just can't hold back anymore, and she turns to Elizabeth I and addresses her as figlia impura di Bolena and meretrice indegna oscena, impure daughter of Boleyn and unworthy, obscene whore. Those are the words. No wonder they were censored sometimes in the 19th century. And here, Elizabeth I, immediately before the passage we heard, she says to Roberto, she says, before you insulted the daughter of the tremendous Henry VIII. So she claims for herself the fact that she is, in fact, not an impure daughter, that she is the daughter of Henry VIII. And then she says, before insulting me, you should have better descended alive into the grave. So here goes another wonderful moment. You haven't heard that, so now you are allowed to turn on your mobile devices and purchase tickets from carnegiehall.org so that you can hear the performance on June the 5th, including this moment of extraordinary invective coming from Elizabeth I. We now turn, without further ado, to Act 3. Sara has received a letter. She has received a letter from Roberto, who is in prison, and that letter begs her to send the ring to Elizabeth. But Nottingham, who has discovered that she's unfaithful, sort of unfaithful, orders her confined, and so the ring never arrives. This is what triggers the final catastrophe. And at the beginning of the act, we're going to see the duet, final duet of the opera, the one for Nottingham and Sara. The following number shows us Roberto in prison and awaiting execution, and that's a magnificent double aria. So the tenor finally gets his own solo moment, because remember, he hasn't had one so far. He's the only one who hasn't had an aria. In Act 1, each of the other principal characters is introduced with a solo. The solo for the tenor is postponed until this very powerful prison scene in Act 3. So, Eve, I think you've had enough of a break. I step down again. London, Sara cannot rush to his rescue because she's confined in her home by a furious Duke of Nottingham. You can tell that this is not going to end well. Now Donizetti has to account for the fourth character in this fateful quartet. He has to account for Queen Elizabeth I. And it is a very interesting moment from a dramatic standpoint. And it is a wonderful opportunity to look back at the other two Tudor operas to examine to explore how Donizetti ends his operas and how he manages to zoom into just one tragic female figure who is explored in all of her psychological complexity and depth. With Anna Bolena and Maria Stuarda, Donizetti had a relatively easy time on two counts. For one thing, both of them were the victims. Both of them were the ones who were being led to the scaffold to be executed. And when something like that happens, of course, I presume one is probably not in a very good mood, and one can even lose control over one's own feelings and actions. So in Anna Bolena of 1830, the first Tudor queen by Donizetti, loses her mind. And there is one of the first great mad scenes of Italian opera of this period. In Maria Stuarda, which we saw recently at the Met, Maria is depicted as a political and religious leader. She's a highly charismatic figure, so she cannot lose her mind, but she can have a moment of public prayer and then die as a victim who is clearly being wronged, accordingly to that rendition of the tale. So those are easy situations, so to speak, to handle dramatically, because you have the one-dimensional victim, and then within that one-dimensional character type, Donizetti explores the psychological nuances. But with Elisabetta, Elizabeth I, in Roberto Devereux, the situation is much more complex, because she's caused all of her own troubles by sentencing, by signing the death sentence for Roberto without thinking very carefully about it. And now she regrets it. And she's shown in her court, and one key expression in her recitative, which we're not going to hear tonight, but you'll hear it on June the 5th, is she says, "Io sono donna al fin," I am a woman in the end. And one should not take that I am not as if she were meaning I'm not a man. Not at all. She means I am no longer the queen. We saw her in Act 1 appear in her full authority before her court and singing the big double aria with a great deal of confidence. And at this point, she makes it very clear that being the Queen of England doesn't matter in the slightest to her anymore. What matters is that she is a woman, and that as a woman she suffers. So again, as we said earlier for the Duke of Nottingham, we have a character who has developed from the beginning of the opera to this very powerful final scene. Another characteristic of Donizetti's final scenes, where he concentrates on the tragic female figure, is that they're long. Very long, as a matter of fact, often exceeding 20 minutes. Unfortunately, we're not going to hear the whole thing tonight, but we will from Mariella De Via on June the 5th, of course. And Donizetti had to deal with some formal decisions in order to make a whole number last some 20 minutes, or even longer in the case of Maria Stuarda. I described earlier how most of Donizetti's numbers are based on two lyrical sections, a slow cantabile and a fast conclusive cabaletta. But in order to give a prima donna all of the space she needs to express her feelings, to display her virtuosity, all that one needs to do in the final scene of an opera, in Anna Bolena and in Maria Stuarda, Donizetti actually concocts a triple aria of sorts. It is very interesting, and I cannot resist the temptation to steal Eve's job for a moment and just remind you of what happens in Anna Bolena, so that you get a sense of how this very large number can function. Essentially, can you still hear me? Yes. Essentially, there are two cantabile sections. There are two slow lyrical sections instead of just one. So in Anna Bolena, there is the moment of madness, the moment in which she is obviously delirious, and she sings the magnificent Al dolce guidami. Nothing yet. You don't know the extent to which I can ruin Donizetti. Then she comes to a second cantabile, which is absolutely fascinating. Eve reminded us earlier how in the overture to Roberto Devereux, Donizetti quotes what is effectively the English national anthem, God Save the Queen. Well, here in Anna Bolena, he quotes, some of you will remember, Home Sweet Home, a very popular song by Sir Henry Rowley Bishop. This is how it goes. Donizetti is done with those two cantabile sections that he turns to the final cabaletta, which is fascinating because Anna is really being led to her execution. She is being led to the block, and she says, "Oh, I'll descend with pardon on my lips. I'll descend into the grave with pardon on my lips. I do not ask for revenge," but Donizetti knows better. Donizetti reads between the lines, so to speak, and she gives her some of the most frightful music that he's able to write, and it goes like this. Compia iniqua l'estrema vendetta, non impreco, non in quest'ora tremenda. Very forceful, very vengeful, musically, where the words say the exact opposite. This is one of the great powers of opera, that you can say one thing with the music, with the words, but you can say something very different with the musical setting. In Maria Stuarda, Donizetti does exactly the same. She doesn't lose her mind, as I said before, but she prays. And then she has another, more intimate cantabile, and then the final cabaletta, where again she speaks words of pardon, but she sings very vengeful music. Save the applause for the real singing. Now, in Roberto Devereux, Donizetti could not play the same trick for the third time. He couldn't have a triple aria, as he does in Anna Bolena and in Maria Stuarda. He also could not have the contrast between the words of pardon and the vengeful music. So he comes up with a solution. He has the cantabile, the slow lyrical section that you would expect at the beginning, where basically she says, okay, go, Roberto, live with the other woman, I forgive you. But it is too late. The execution is about to take place, the ring has not arrived, and Roberto is, in fact, executed off stage. At that point, she has to conclude the number, and what she says is not pretty. The words themselves are not pretty. She turns to Nottingham, whom she knows is to blame for the execution that has taken place, and she also turns against Sara, who, poor woman, has got nothing to do with it. And she tells them that there is a vengeful God that awaits them. And she tells them, supplizio infernale entrambi v'aspetta, infernal torture awaits you. And she says furthermore, in your final hour, turn to God because he perhaps will grant forgiveness. Che forse perdono conceder potrà. Perhaps he will grant forgiveness, perhaps not. And it is very clear that Elisabetta, this fictional Elizabeth I, does not forgive. So for the third time in this final Tudor opera, Donizetti manages to have the big final scene for the prima donna, but he manages to surprise his audiences who already knew certainly Anna Bolena. Many of them also knew Maria Stuarda, and who wanted the convention of the big final scene, but they also wanted to be surprised, and Donizetti did so very, very successfully. Now, I know this doesn't end well. It's all rather depressing in a way, but here at Casa Italiana there is always a happy ending. So can I say that we're all invited upstairs for a moment afterwards? Okay, I stole your line, Stefano. I'm sorry. I'd just like to say, first of all, thank you so much for being here and for attending this preview of Roberto Devereux. Thanks again to Maestro Eve Queler and to all of our wonderful singers, and also to Miki, our other pianist, for the wonderful music they've given us. And everyone is invited upstairs for a glass of Prosecco so that we can turn a Donizetti tragic finale into a party scene from Act 1 of La Traviata. Thank you very much. We still have to hear Elisabetta do her thing first.
Nobody's died yet.
Nobody's died yet.
Thank you.